Hey guys, it's Brett. Thanks for dropping by my channel. So I have a lot of ground to cover with you today. First of all, I wanted to do my October wrap-up, which I had hoped to actually have this for you yesterday, but I was out of town this weekend in New York, so I'm just playing catch-up. So this video and tomorrow's will be a day behind. It is, of course, today is Halloween. I don't know about where you live, but where I live, we get literally thousands of kids, although I don't know what it's going to be like because last year we didn't pass out candy, and so I don't know what to expect. But if it's not a great turnout, then my little free library will be filled with M&Ms and Reese's Cups because I don't want them in the house. Also, so yes, today I want to do a wrap up, but there's two other things I want to talk about because I haven't been here and the kind of relevance, one of which today is lay down day. I know I'm no longer doing the Tuesday lay down, which might come back eventually. A lot of you have very sweetly sent me messages saying how much you miss it, how much you enjoyed it. So I just want to bring mention to two books that are out today, both of which I thought I would have read this past month and didn't get to. So hope to get to possibly this month. The first is Matthew Quick's We Are the Light. I talked about this before. Matthew Quick is, of course, he wrote the Silver Lining Playbook. This is supposed to be really good, not very long, sentimental, sweet. So that's one thing that came out today. The other thing is Catherine Dunn's Toad, which came out today. Catherine Dunn wrote Geek Love, which is one of my personal favorite books. So I'm really excited about this. This is loosely based on her time when she was a student at Reid College. So anyway, those are two books that came out today. The other thing that I just wanted to talk about really quickly was the reason I was in New York this weekend, because primarily I had wanted to see, there was a stage production coming from the Netherlands of A LittleLife. For those of you who aren't familiar with A LittleLife, it is a best-selling book by Hanya Yanagihara. It's kind of really the book that truly made her a literary superstar. It's an epic story about four friends living in New York City, all of whom are kind of brilliant at their chosen professions. One is a artist, one is an architect, one is a very famous actor, and then there's Jude, who's a lawyer. The book really centers on Jude, a kind of physically broken but beautiful young man who, throughout the course of the book, is severely and relentlessly abused, an abusive relationship, kind of growing up. It is all kinds of awful, and yet the book became this huge hit, and many people will tell you that it's their favorite book. It's personally one of mine, but I have I'm under no illusions that it's not a happy book. It's a weeper. There's points I remember putting the book down because it was so brutal and I just needed to walk away from it. Why I thought that going to see a stage adaptation of it would be a good idea, I don't know. But this is the Ivanhoe production, very famous, director. It was at BAM, the Brooklyn Academy of Music, and it was the whole production, the same cast. They brought them all over. It was a very well received production in the Netherlands. So it was also in Dutch with subtitles. The production was 4 hours long. The first act was 2 hours and 10 minutes with an intermission. So already, I was like, okay, here we go. And I was prepared for this. I really was prepared for this. What I was not prepared for was these things and events that had taken place in the book that I had an image of in my mind, seeing it play out on stage in front of me. I was with my husband and one of my very old dear friends who is also a casting director, and she's casts Broadway shows. And people, let me tell you, It was relentless. And there's a reason that not everything should be adapted. And I will say this in a positive light about the production. It was wonderfully acted. It's incredibly well staged. But, for those of you who have read the book, there's something that gets lost in translation. And first of all, part of it is just that New York City is such a prevalent part of the book. When you're not actually having that, except to see images of the streets, kind of they were being projected on screens on the side of the stage. But the brutality of the story was so intense, so intense. And for those of you who haven't read it, the Jude character regularly cuts himself. And watching that, witnessing that over and over and over, and then watching these actors mop up the blood as they continued on, and it was a little torture porn. And so, so we left it intermission because we all were in desperate need of a stiff drink. And, you know, when I had read the reviews for the American papers, it all pretty much said the same, which was, you know, it was a kind of relentless descent into torture. I don't like Saw movies. I don't like, so again, where I can appreciate what was kind of being done, it really made me, and I was almost going to do a whole other, just a vlog about this subject alone, where not everything should or needs to be adapted, and this was a case in point where I felt like a lot got lost in translation, and I really can't imagine walking in blind and not knowing what it was about and thinking, oh, let's go see this 4-hour extravaganza. The other thing that was weird on a side note, and then I'll go over my wrap up of this past month. During the course of the play, 45 minutes in, a woman suddenly stood up and stumbled onto the stage. I thought it was a plant at first, and that was part of the production, but she stumbled onto the stage and promptly passed out, which the show, you know, the actors, everyone kind of, the audience you could see kind of confused, and one of the actors walked over and suddenly said in just beautiful English, is there a doctor in the house? The show stopped for about 15 minutes. The actors never left the stage. So the whole thing was a little bit of a weird experience. But if there's anyone out there who has seen this production, I would love to get your thoughts and see what you thought of it. I was really excited about it. I kind of knew what I was getting into, just didn't realize the intensity and how intense it would get. So lesson learned, and hopefully all the powers that be will stay away from adapting this. All right, now moving on to my month. I read 11 books this month. Generally speaking, I had a pretty decent month. Sticking to my TBR, I did not. I think for my original TBR, I ended up reading like 3 for my original TBR. Oh, that's fine. I'm just gonna tell you what I read, give you a quick description. Some of these I've already reviewed on here anyway, so you already know. The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Trembley. Again, I read this because I saw the preview for the M. Night Shyamalan movie that's going to be coming out in February, so I really wanted to read it just to know if Jonathan Groff and Ben Aldridge were going to die at the end of the film, and if so, I wouldn't be going to see it. It's a really interesting book, very interesting concept about, you know, a gay couple with a daughter who go away for a weekend, and a foursome who show up at their door saying that they've been chosen to do something else the world will end, and make kind of an impossible choice. It's an interesting premise. Did it completely play through for me? I'm not sure. So I didn't love it. I liked it, enjoyed it. So yeah, so there was that. The Book of Goose by Yiyun Lee. You know, this story has been compared a little bit to the Elena Ferrante books, because it's about 2 girls growing up in a very provincial town in France, growing up together, and they come up with a scheme to write a book about their lives, and it's kind of the more precocious one, not the one telling the story. who is kind of pushing her other friend into doing this. Well, they enlist the help of a man who knows literary people, and this book ends up getting published. And the girl who is telling the story, Agnes, she becomes the face of the book and becomes this kind of literary progeny and what happens. So I thought the book was beautifully written. I thought that the story was really interesting. I've never read her before, and she's one of these authors that is very celebrated. To be perfectly honest, this is one of those moments when I feel like a little bit of an idiot because I'm reading it and thinking, I'm enjoying this. I wasn't like crazy about it. It wasn't a book that I felt like, oh my God, I need to let everyone know about this and it needs to be on the 10 best books of the year list. And I bet it will end up on some end of year lists. And I don't know if that speaks to me as a reader, that I just didn't feel a connection to it like I expected to feel a connection to it. Again, I liked the book a lot. Was it one of the best things I've read this year? No, not necessarily. Would I recommend it? Perhaps. I think to people who are into literary fiction. So I'd be curious for people who have read it what they think of it and what they thought. Lavender House by Lev A.C. Rosen. I thought this was really fun. The mystery part of this was not overwhelming. It didn't take much to kind of guess who the the killer was going to be. However, I liked the noir feeling that he invoked. I thought it was great. I thought it was spot on. I liked what he was trying to say about the kind of secret lives that so many gay people had to lead at the time. I found that fascinating, totally entertaining read. It was fun. So there's that. Mountain and the Sea by Ray Nayler. I've spoken about this before. This was probably, I think, one of my favorites of the month and one of my favorites of the year. It completely blew my mind. I've talked to you all about how I've become obsessed with octopus. This, or octopi, octopus, what is the plural? I've been down this road before and I know someone will help me out there. I loved this about a set kind of a future world where all of our oceans are decimated, and a scientist who is brought in because a super species of octopus has been found in this archipelago. And aided by this AI individual, she sets out to try to communicate with it. It was so good. It's philosophical and thoughtful and thought-provoking without being too heady. It reads at times just like a really engaging, it's not quite a thriller, but there are elements to that. I loved this book. Army of Lovers by K.M. Soehnlein. I loved this too. Again, I've talked about this before because it was so similar in conception to Rashid Nelson's My Government Means to Kill Me. This is about, again, like that, a young gay man who moves to New York City, who gets involved with ACT UP in the 80s during the Reagan administration. But where Rashid's book is a kind of, to me, a slicker version of the story, and it's very clever, and I've talked about it before, and he gives footnotes to all these people, real life people and incidents that his characters are interacting with. He also has real life characters interacting, most notably Larry Kramer, interacting with his character. But this is much more of I found this much more of a personal story than the other. Even though that had those moments, this was a little grittier. This reminded me very much of in the beginning of the AIDS crisis in the 80s, when many of these writers were trying to have put out a creative response to what was happening, like the Larry Kramers, like the William Hoffmans, playwrights especially, who were just trying to get, Paul Monette, who were trying to get out their feelings and stories of what was going on. And that's what this really reminded me of. I really loved this. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was sad. He absolutely evokes the time period, the anger, the frustration. I thought it was a great book. I've talked, the Thursday Murder Club, this was one of those I'd said I was determined to read it, and I did. I actually listened to it on audio, which I'm so glad I did. My husband's reading it right now and has liked it, but I don't think he's enjoyed it as much. And someone else I said, well, I liked the book. And I will push it again on audio and say, if you haven't heard this, or if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend it on audio. It's so well done. You know, the story about 4 septuagenarians, I just reviewed all of this. I loved this book. Can't wait to start the next one. Also loved, you know, a big favorite on the book platforms, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I've only read one other Taylor Jenkins Reid, like to buy a vowel, and that was her Daisy one, about the musician that Reese Witherspoon is making into the series. And I liked that. I thought it was good. This I loved. I don't know, maybe it was the old Hollywood thing. Again, listen to this on audio. 2 incredible narrators. It really brought so much of it alive for me in a way that I wonder if just reading the book would have. We'll never know. But really engaging story. This is another one that has been bought to be adapted, and I really wish they wouldn't, because I hate when they try to make a Hollywood story with fake created characters. Somehow it works for me in books, but first of all, they're never going to be able to cast this, I think, to live up to who she is and these other characters. Come back to me in 2 years, I might be eating that. There could be somebody amazing playing Evelyn Hugo, and I'm like, all right, I'll eat my crow. But right now I'm saying, no, leave it alone. Leave it alone. Let it just go down as a hugely popular book that everyone loves so much. And but of course they're going to make it into whatever they're going to make it, because, you know, hi, Hollywood. All right, but love that. I reviewed this extensively, The Last Chairlift. Big. So I don't need to repeat it now. I liked this. I feel like it's a regurgitation of a lot of the themes that he's already done. Yeah, that's kind of it. If you're a diehard John Irving fan, then I'd say, yes, of course, read it. If you're new to John Irving, no. Get A Prayer for Owen Meany, get The Cider House Rules, get The World According to Garp, get those 3. One of those 3. Owen Meany is his best, in my opinion. But this one, well, I'm glad I have it. But Stephen King's Fairy Tale, I liked this a lot. Again, I'm a big Stephen King fan. I liked what he was trying to do. The book slogged for me a little bit in the middle when it becomes kind of like Squid Game or The Hunger Games. But I actually enjoyed the first part of the book more than anything, even kind of more than when he got to the fairy tale world. But it is amazing to me that this man's imagination continues to bubble up this stuff, and he's still churning these things out. Even a bad Stephen King book is better than many authors' best books. And it's by no means, I'm not saying that to say this is a bad book, 'cause it's not. It's totally enjoyable. It could reach a wider range of people who may be turned off to Stephen King, because it's not very violent. It's not, you know, it is magic done, fairy tale done Stephen King way. The last 2 books I read on my Kindle, and so I didn't have copies of them. The one I've spoken about already, which is Iain Reid's We Spread, a completely affecting, absorbing book about one woman's, I will frankly say it's the nightmare of aging and losing one's mind to either dementia or Alzheimer's. but presented in a way that truly verges on feeling like a real-life horror novel. As the reader and as her character, you're questioning, are these things actually happening to her, or is it all in her mind? But it's a slim book, really powerful. I liked it a lot. The last book of the month was Jessi Hempel's The Family Outing. I was really excited to read this book because of the idea, it's an autobiographical novel. Jessi Hempel is lesbian. Her sister is bisexual, and we find out in the course of this, effectively her entire family comes out. Her father comes out as gay, her brother is transgender, and her mother had her own secret, which was when she was a teenage girl, she was almost the victim of a serial killer, which could absolutely F you up. So it's kind of this family's coming to terms with who they all are. Where I had a problem with the book is because it's all told from her perspective and getting impressions and feelings from her siblings on their process and what they went through, there's a certain sequential nature to the book that I just found a little dull, which was, and then this happened, and then it was Christmas, and then this happened, and then this happened. On top of that, because it's not the individual people telling their own story and she's kind of doing it through her lens, there's a certain remove that takes place. So I was excited more about the idea of the book than I was in the execution of the book. So those are my 11 books of October. How did you guys fare? Did you read a lot? Did you not read much at all? Was there something you absolutely loved that you need to tell me about below? Please do. I'd love to hear what those things are. Tomorrow, or the following day, just depending on what I can accomplish today, I'm going to post my list of things that I would like to read in November. And then shortly after that, I'm going to be posting books that I would recommend, since November is Nonfiction November, or some people will call it NetGalley November. But there are a million great nonfiction titles out there. And even for those who are like, I don't really like to read nonfiction, I'm telling you, there's certainly some engaging reads. So I will go over those in the next few days, or maybe early next week. I hope you all have a wonderful, or have had, because now we're into November, I hope you have had a wonderful and safe Halloween. For those who are into Halloween, welcome to November, and I'll see you all in the next few days.